Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this, the 13th Beyond Borders breakfast. I'm delighted that we've got such a fabulous panel and expert speakers and contributors to our discussion this morning. It's very timely, as many of you will know, following the recent proposal in the Parliament and the adoption of that. And we're looking forward very much to discussing that. It's, of course, in the context, I've had the privilege, I'm Andrew Lansley, I'm Strategic Counsel at Low Associates, and we have the great privilege to be able to support DG REGIO in the Border Focal Point Network and these Beyond Borders breakfasts. In this case, I remember, I think I was moderating the discussion 2 years ago when we looked at border regions, living labs of European integration, and looked at the many opportunities for border regions themselves to be examples of cohesion, integration, creativity, and exploitation of the European values. We looked at that, and it's a great opportunity. We've looked at many specific areas and sectors, and quite often when we are asking our participants about where the obstacles lie, they lie in legal or administrative issues, which is why it's so helpful to have this discussion now about how a new European legal tool may solve cross-border obstacles. As is our interesting custom in these breakfasts, we are conducting polls among our participants as well as discussion with our panelists. I'm going to launch the first poll now before I ask Dirk Peters from DG REGIO to introduce our discussion. The first poll is, let me put it up now, is to ask you if you will identify, please, in your opinion, what is the most effective way to further eliminate administrative and legal obstacles in cross-border regions across the European Union. And you have a number of options. You have option 1, an EU-wide legal tool. Option 2, sectoral EU-wide legal instruments. 3, bilateral or multilateral agreements. 4, further strengthening of already established cooperation institutions, such as the European Groupings for Territorial Cooperation. And 5, soft law instruments, by which we mean issuing guidelines, capacity building, and good practice exchanges. Please choose one in the course of the next couple of minutes or so. Thank you very much. Now let me turn to our senior expert at DG REGIO, who is going to introduce our discussion. Delighted to have you with us. Dirk Peters from DG REGIO, over to you.
Yes, good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Andrew. Well, this 2018 Commission proposal on a mechanism actually did not fall from the sky. It was the result of a whole exercise that started in 2015 with the Luxembourg presidency of the Council, with the work DG REGIO did on border regions that then resulted in the 2017 communication. And we have to remember that a third of the EU population lives in border regions. That was EU 28 at the time, 150 million. That would be the biggest member state. So over 30 years, we did a lot of funding with Interreg to help to cooperate more in the border regions. But there is a first paradoxon of cross-border cooperation. The more you cooperate, the more border regions act in a 360 perspective and not turning the backs to each other, the more the both sides are intertwined. Imagine a basket, the twisting and braiding of baskets. In German, we say Verflechtung. So the more complex it becomes. We have 1.3 million cross-border workers and many people crossing the border for other reasons. 1.3 million, that's the whole of Estonian population. So this is really not a minority, not a minimum thing. So we realized that money is not enough. and we should go beyond funding, and that's why we proposed this regulation. The border regions and their inhabitants, they understood it even more when for COVID the borders out of the blue were closed and they couldn't go to work, couldn't go to the kindergarten, to schools, to universities, to hospitals. And so they live it. And still in a survey we did in July 2020, 44%, almost half of the people reacting, said that legal and administrative obstacles are really an issue. So the people in the border regions, they do understand. Well, the capitals still do not, well, most capitals do still not understand what is at stake.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Thank you for that excellent introduction. And actually, to set it in context is really helpful. Thank you for that. Can I just give first, by way of response to our poll, I have the data on what the view is of our participants on the first poll. If you remember, a number of options for the question, what is the most effective way to further eliminate administrative and legal obstacles in cross-border regions across the European Union? And of the respondents, 54% said an EU-wide legal tool. 20% said bilateral or multilateral agreements. 11% said sectoral EU-wide legal instruments. 7% said soft law instruments. So we have, those are the main responses. There is a clear majority indeed for an EU-wide legal tool, which obviously is exactly the subject of our discussion today. Others have views about other options, but a majority supports that approach. So let's head into our panel discussion, but at the same time asking all of our colleagues to respond to a second poll question as we move forward. The second poll question, let me read it and it'll come up on the screen as well. In your opinion, which of the following parameters is the most essential for the design of an EU-wide legal tool that seeks to eliminate administrative and legal obstacles in cross-border cooperation? First option. It being voluntary, member states should be free to choose which border obstacles to solve or not. Option 2, the creation of one or more coordination points in each member state to ensure border regions have clarity on whom to send their obstacles, or to whom, I should say. The minimisation is option 3, the minimisation of the administrative burden associated with the implementation of the tool. I don't think we have an option 4. Do I see an option 4? No, we have 3 options on the poll, those 3 options. Okay, we'll get to the results of that in a short while. Let's just come now, if I may, to our panelists. We're hoping to be joined shortly by Sandro Gozi, who is of course the rapporteur and has been the rapporteur for this proposal to the Commission from the European Parliament, and will explain his approach to that. But in the meantime, I wonder if we might, in order to secure some of the understanding of the background, come first to Christa Kammerhofer-Schlegel. Christa, of course, is in the European Parliament Research Service, seconded to the European Parliament Services, and has worked in the Austrian permanent representation to the European Union for a number of years. And she has been involved in the field of local development and community initiatives. Christa, can I just ask if you would perhaps introduce our panel discussion? You looked at the implications of efforts to abolish administrative and legal obstacles using different policy scenarios and instruments. I wonder if you would just tell us something about what your research told us about the different options for addressing this issue, please. Christa.
Yes, thank you very much for having the opportunity to present our study on the European cross-border mechanism today. I'm the co-author of this study together with Lenka Yankova, who cannot make it today because she has another commitment in a Parliament committee. We both work at the Parliament's European Added Value Assessment Unit, and this is part of the Parliament's research service, the so-called EPRS. And one of our tasks is that we deliver European added value assessment studies. And these assessments support legislative initiative reports which are carried out by committees, such as the one on the cross-border mechanism. So our starting point, of course, was the Commission's proposal, the Parliament's opinion thereof, and also the launch of the new legislative initiative report of Parliament, on which Mr. Gozi is the rapporteur. So we assessed the situation in the cross-border regions, cross-border corporations, and as Dirk Peters already mentioned, there are really very impressive figures in the daily life where citizens and business are involved. So in total, there are 40 internal land border regions in the EU, and they represent 40% of the territory, and they represent almost 30% of the population. And this accounts for 30% of the union's GDP. So these are very impressive figures, I would say, showing the importance of cohesion policy for territorial cohesion, but also to avoid regional disparities. So we started with looking at the existing instruments, which facilitates the cross-border cooperation. And many of these instruments were developed over decades. And one of the most prominent instrument is the financing instrument, Interreg. But I guess the participants, they all know and are familiar with these instruments. I just would like to highlight a few of them because they are part of our analysis. And this is, as I said, Interreg, the financing instrument, the European grouping of territorial cooperation, and REGIOs, for example. And also the B-Solutions initiatives, they play a very important role in exchanging the best practice, but also in identifying obstacles. We also looked at bilateral and multilateral agreements, so intergovernmental agreements of member states. For example, the Aachen Treaty between Germany and France, or the so-called Barcelona Treaty between Spain and France. And also as a multilateral agreement, it's the Nordic Council we had a short look at. So despite all these existing instruments, gaps have identified in the cross-border cooperation. And why is this? So each of the before mentioned instruments, they have shortcomings. Each instrument as such is not sufficient to overcome all the existing legal and administrative obstacles to cross-border cooperation. For example, the EGTCs, so the European groupings of territorial cooperation, they lack legal competence, for example, or the intergovernmental, meaning the bilateral and multilateral agreements, they are effective only between the concluding parties. And the platforms, they don't have legal power and focus on exchange of good practices, and they cannot serve as a mechanism to solve legal and administrative obstacles. So they are the barriers, and they still affect many border regions. For example, only most part, 90% of the legal and administrative obstacles can be found only in 5 sectors. This is also what Dirk mentioned at the beginning, the access to the labor market, access to education, access to social security and health, access to transport, etc. So I do not want to mention all of them. And 2/3 of these obstacles affect the entire land border, and almost 60% of these obstacles create negative impact on the cross-border integration. So our study assessed 3 questions. What is the impact of the barriers? what is the potential for EU action, and what would be the qualitative and quantitative impact of the three options. So the case studies demonstrate the impact of the obstacles on the everyday citizen's life. And in economic terms, the impact are as follows. Our study estimates a significant cost of these obstacles to cross-border cooperation. And if we removed all the obstacles, meaning we have no obstacles at all, this would bring a total value of 457 billion euros per year. This corresponds to 3.8% of the gross added value EU-wide. But of course, this is not realistic scenario. So what could be done to overcome the obstacles? We identified three options. The one is we continue with the status quo. So nothing will change. We continue on the existing measures and instruments. Policy option two would be to complement it with soft law instruments, so to boost, for example, administrative cooperation, to improve cooperation between borders, to use more digital tools. Digital tools play an important role in the cross-border cooperation, and also improve data collection. So these are just a few what I want to mention, what could be used. There are many more, and you can find this in the study. The option three is the most ambitious one, and it would be complementary to all the other to the options mentioned before. So, and this would be to adopt the European cross-border mechanism, but streamline the proposal, simplify it, simplify the procedures, and also offer a toolbox to member states. So meaning that the member states have the choice of the instruments which they can use in solving problems, including the European cross-border mechanism. And with this, we found that it can be tackled. The cross-border problems can be tackled sufficiently. And what are the impacts? So now again, I come back to figures again. We assessed the potential impacts based on the Commission's impact assessment. We updated the calculation, and we used the most recent available data from 2014-2019. So we based now the estimation on a realistic assumption, because what I said before is not realistic, that we eliminate 100% administrative and legal obstacles. So, but if we only removed 20% of the obstacles for all border regions, then this would count for a total benefit of 123 billion per year. This is around 1% of the total 2019 EU added value, and it could create 1 million additional jobs. So we found that this option 3 has the highest potential to address the wide range of different obstacles, and it would fit for the variety of border regions context. So these are our findings. You can find all this in our study. I can add the link to the chat where you can have a look at all the details. So thank you very much.
Christa, thank you very much indeed. I thought that was an absolutely excellent analysis and understanding of the relative impacts. Some of your numbers are very compelling. Just 20% of the administrative and legal obstacles, if I heard correctly, if they were able to be removed, would be potentially worth 1% of GDP and 1 million jobs. These are fantastic potential benefits available. Can I just ask one question before I move to our next panelist? we have mechanisms for cooperation, including some that are across border regions throughout the EU, including the European groupings for territorial cooperation and the B Solutions initiative, which we've talked very positively about in the past. To what extent did your analysis suggest that these are not being sufficiently used, or that are they being used well, but they have limitations on their ability to remove the legal obstacles?
Yes, thank you. I think all the existing instruments are valid, and they should be enhanced and used. So each of the, for example, the EGTC has a value on its own, and also the B solution initiatives. It's a great platform for exchange, for identifying obstacles. So they are really valid, and they should continue to do so. But to overcome then legal and administrative obstacles, which have are also, related to these differences in laws and differences in governance structures of member states, there is a missing link. And we would say this missing link could be then filled with a European initiative through the setting up the European cross-border mechanism. So there is legally a missing link, and this could be filled by the ECBM.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. May I turn to another of our panelists, to Thiemo Eser, who is head of the International Affairs and European Territorial Cooperation Division at the Ministry of Energy and Spatial Planning in the government of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Of course, Luxembourg quintessentially and over, I might say, generations has understood about how to manage border relationships and border regions. In this particular instance, Thiemo, would you tell us a bit about how you view the scope for an EU-wide legal tool and how that might relate and be viewed by a national government like your own, which has so much experience in this area? Thiemo, please.
Yes, thank you. I think the wider context has been very well explained for the added value of such tool, and to set it in our context, I mean, we feel that the common market at the EU level is not very much advanced when you come to border regions, especially if you have a high level of interactions in a region like we have here in the greater region with Luxembourg and the neighboring countries, but as well in areas where we have to cope with remoteness and a shortage of services which can be maybe used on the other side of the border. Now, coming to the legal tool, I would like to highlight, and Dirk was actually saying we are discussing that for already a while, and he was mentioning that we had this discussion at the European at our presidency in 2015, where we were first proposing and discussing with member states under the title of cross-border convention, a kind of legal tool or instrument, which was then after quite some studies picked up by the Commission, and we were very happy at that time with a proposal on the cross-border mechanism, which then became heavily discussed between member states. And then we had the proposal which was voted now by the Parliament, and I think Mr. Gozi will say more about it in the European Parliament. But coming now back to the question, I mean, do we need a legal tool? And this brings me also to the poll, what you were suggesting. The question is, do we actually use the right wording for the tool? And this exclusivity, what the poll actually was proposing, that what is the most effective tool? is it a legal tool or is it soft collaboration? I think this is in a way leading a bit the debate in a wrong direction, which was perceived in the discussion between member states a bit in the wrong way, because it implicated a kind of top-down approach. And as we see, and maybe you can turn now to the next slides, there are a lot of principles which are important to consider when we talk about a legal instrument. We have already a number of tools and regulations, and they were mentioning also before. So there is something ongoing. There are bilateral agreements, and the question is, how can we actually value this kind of instruments, organizations, institutions, which are already existing in setting up a legal tool or a legal instrument. And therefore, I would just like to focus on the basic elements which, from our understanding, would be useful to take into account. I mean, what we actually want with such an instrument is to create added value, to provide legal certainty, that, I mean, we can overcome any obstacles by negotiations bilaterally, but we know it takes loads of time, and we want to avoid this muddling through, which is sometimes successful and sometimes not. So therefore, we think it's very important to focus on a process orientation rather than a result focus. That, I mean, and I think this was one of the misunderstandings of the mechanism proposal, that there should be a certain kind of legal result or tool employed. So in that regard, we would rather opt for a coordination framework which works bottom up and voluntary. And I think there are many elements included on the table. And this takes me actually to the point that we have, in a way, to make sure that all these initiatives which are existing in member states, mechanisms, Aachen Treaty, and so on, that they can all be used by filling in this framework or this legal instrument which is to be developed. So, and what we can also see, I mean, there was a big debate about what is actually a legal obstacles, and we have good studies about it, and we have inventory. So maybe we have to focus on not defining specific subject areas, but to define what actually makes a legal obstacle. And then, I mean, we should find tailor-made solutions. We should try to be issue specific, and I think this place-based dimension is a very important one. I mean, we know certain norms affect only certain regions on both sides on the border. We don't need to have an EU-wide solution for that. So therefore, it's also important to highlight that it should be place-based and maybe even time-limited. And that actually also means that we should, in a way, ensure, and this was one of also the big discussions which was between member states, that we have to ensure that the competent authorities are in charge to find the solution. I mean, the process should actually lead to the kind of statement of the competent authority to say either we get active or we cannot, for this and this reason, become active now or maybe later. So that we get a kind of process and order in the kind of treatment of legal obstacles. So this is in a way where we see the potential on the one side to move forward, but on the other side also to take note and acknowledge all the efforts which have been done and not to overrule competent authorities. And in that way, coming back to the poll, I think it's not one instrument, it's not the EU legal tool or sectoral arrangements or soft laws. It's a kind of smart combination of all these elements, because otherwise we may focus on this or that, but I think the package makes it in the end where everybody can find itself and also find itself with also having the feeling that the administrative burden is not becoming more but less, because we can really achieve this impact which has been mentioned frequently. Thank you.
Thiemo, thank you very much indeed, and thank you especially for that really excellent taxonomy, as it were, of the components of a potential legal instrument of that kind. That's really helpful, and it's a fascinating thing, speaking as somebody who has in my day been a legislator, the idea that you can have more laws in order to reduce legal and administrative obstacles to people doing what they want to do is a challenging but nonetheless rather exciting venture, I would have thought. If I may, we're in the midst of our panel discussions. We have to come to Pavel before we finish, but we're delighted to have Sandro Gozi with us. Sandro, if I may presume, I'm Andrew Lansley, I'm the moderator for our Borders Breakfasts. And we've had an introduction, excellent introduction from John Peters at the DG REGIO and set some of the context. Christa from the European Parliamentary Research Service gave us absolutely fascinating, indeed rather compelling data about the potential benefits from the impact assessment of an EU-wide legal tool. If it removes 20% of the administrative and legal obstacles, she said that could measure up to 1% of European GDP and 1 million jobs. And Thiemo has just set out some really interesting material about how such a legal obstacle might be constructed and how it's viewed from Luxembourg as itself one of the exponents of the work of cross-border cooperation. I wonder, could we come to you? Thank you very much for being with us, to tell us about Bridge EU and the European Parliament proposal, of which you were obviously the principal author, and tell us what it is that you're hoping to achieve with that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. I'm sorry for being late, but I had an unforeseen commitment before. And when it rains in Brussels, it's impossible to move in the city. It sounds strange, as the rain is not something totally unfamiliar to the city, but it is like that. So thank you again, and thank you also for what you said and what you have written, because I've gone through the documentation preparing this seminar, and certainly all the intervention and documents, in my view, rightly points at the heart of the problem and go toward the right direction. What we have done in the European Parliament, first of all, we didn't invent anything. We thought that the work done previously by Luxembourg, notably since 2015, together with France and by the European Commission, especially DG REGI, but in general the European Commission, was a very valuable work, because we are talking about a problem which exists, persists, and prevents territories and citizens from fully benefiting from the opportunity provided by the European Union and provided by the single market. And also the document of the European Commission and the dissolution documents indicate that there are absurd obstacles which still divide citizens and territory. And this doesn't concern a minority. This concerns 1/3 of the EU population, because it is around 150 million people that lives along internal borders of the European Union, which is, by the way, a contradiction in terms. When you talk about free movement of goods, of people, if you think that we are supposed to have a single market with at least 4 freedoms since 1993. So, I mean, we thought that we had to do something. We didn't accept the fact that the negotiation were stuck in the council following the first attempt, the first legislative proposals, the one called the ECBM, European Cross-Border Mechanism for, inter-regional cross-border cooperation. And we start to work, first of all, to listen to all the actors, to the stakeholders. I mean, we have been met several times. We have met several times the member states, starting, of course, with Luxembourg. We have met a representative and official of the European Commission, which in our exchange have been, by the way, very helpful. We have worked with the Committee of the Regions, which has already adopted an opinion which, invites the EU institutions to go along the adoption of a new legislative tool to tackle this issue. And we've decided to exercise our prerogative of, let's say, pre-legislative initiative. There is an article of the Treaty 255 that allows the European Parliament to take on a sort of legislative initiative, i.e. Give the formal possibility to the Parliament to ask to the European Commission, and indirectly also to the Council in this case, to present or to reopen a legislative negotiation. And that's what we have done. So on one side, we agreed, because the problem exists, so we agreed and we tried to to emphasize the importance of the work already being done, especially, I repeat, by Luxembourg, by the European Commission first. Second, we have tried in our proposal, legislative proposal, to take into account the main concerns expressed by member state in the negotiation in the Council. And these concerns were about the compulsory nature of the instrument to tackle this issue of cross-border obstacles. I mean, our main idea is we need to find a mechanism, an instrument to remove this kind of obstacle through ad hoc case-by-case solution. This is the aim of our work. Of course, the regulation is enforced in the 27 member states, but we do not oblige the member state to use this instrument. This instrument is voluntary. What does it mean? It means that if there are member states which are perfectly happy with their form of cross-border regional cooperation, take, for example, the Nordic Council, and they want to continue to cooperate through their ways, their method, without using this new regulation, they are perfectly free to do it. We just offer to all the member states a possible instrument, a possible solution. And this is very important for those member states which do not have agreement such as the Nordic Council or the Benelux. So voluntary nature, member state can decide on a case-by-case basis assessment whether they want to use our instrument or not. We also stress that this instrument doesn't affect in any way the distribution of the internal distribution of competence between state, region, and local authority in the member state. We also specified that, as I said, it doesn't affect existing agreement between member states that promote specific form of cross-border regional cooperation. I mentioned already the Nordic Council and the Benelux, but I could mention also the 3 bilateral agreements signed by France with Germany, Aachen Treaty, with Italy, the Quirinale Treaty, with Spain, the Barcelona Treaty. All these 3 treaties foresees a regional cross-border cooperation dimension. These countries are free to go along their instrument or to use our instrument if they think that this would be useful. The procedure is very simple. Basically, we ask to the member state to identify a cross-border coordination point. It can be of course, also an existing authorities which deals with regional and territorial issues. When there is an obstacle, the mayor, the regional council, an association, an NGO locally can signal to the cross-border coordination point whether that there is a problem, that there is an obstacle, that there is barriers. The cross-border coordination point within a certain time has to establish whether the obstacle is real, there is really an obstacle, and to identify possible solution to remove the obstacles. Can be an unilateral review of the national administrative of the legal framework, can be a deferral to the matter to the competent body established by a bilateral or multilateral agreement, can be the adoption of soft measures, and one innovative proposal, if the obstacle is made of a series, of a tangle of specific administrative obstacle, administrative practices, barriers, etc., we give the possibility to create an ad hoc cross-border committee. And the ad hoc cross-border committee, composed by representatives of the national administration and the local administration, shall be tasked with the formulation of the package of ad hoc solutions necessary to remove the obstacle. This is our work, and we wanted to give a signal because from the member state, also from the local authorities, say if you want to start on a fresh, if you want a fresh new start on the legislative negotiation, on the political dialogue, give a signal that we really start a new negotiation. This is why we also change the name of the instrument. Our proposal is to call it Bridge EU, which is a border regional instrument for cooperation, for growth, for development and growth in the Union, Bridge EU, which is also a signal. We don't need new invisible barriers and walls. We need bridge among the territories across the internal borders of the European Union. This is what we have done. And the last point that I want to share with you, Commissioner Ferreira, of course, participated to our debate, and she assured the willingness of the Commission to consider and to work with us on that proposal. I hope the Commission will be able to take the formal decision to present a revised proposal. This is our request, the Commission. I hope that the Commission will want to go along this way. Thank you very much.
Sandro, thank you very much indeed. That's really helpful. You didn't mention the plenary discussion in detail, but it was your proposal was very strongly supported in the plenary session, was it not? Does that what in your view does that now mean in terms of if our participants are wondering when and where and by whom the proposal will be taken up? What would be your expectation of how it would develop?
Well, first of all, yes. First of all, let me say that there was quasi-unanimous support. I mean, basically, all the political groups voted in favor of my proposal, with the exception of some delegation in one political group, the German and the French delegation of ID group, I mean Alternative für Deutschland and Rassemblement National, voted against. All the others, including on the right, Lega, Fratelli d'Italia, on the left, I mean, all the other groups voted in favor. So I obtained a very strong political support by the European Parliament. And this was, I want to recall, only the last step of a series of debate that we launched, because we had adopted a political report 2 years ago. We had tabled an oral question to the Council 1.5 years ago. So on the basis of this precedent, I really managed to obtain a strong political support. And this is why I really hope, and I think that we lay down all the political conditions to allow the Commission now to present a new proposal. And I'm confident the Commission will want to work along this line. Our understanding is also there is a strong interest from the Belgian presidency to take on this issue. And I cannot preempt, of course, the decision of another institutions, but I think there are the condition to relaunch the negotiation with the Council, with the presentation by the Commission of a revised proposals. Let me also say, answer to some questions that I see written. I know perfectly what are the problems. I know that the problem is mainly for cross-border workers. I know the problem is mainly for health education. I thank you very much, those who have listened carefully to me. But yes, I agree with those who have written. We know the problem, and this is why we have worked intensively to table an instrument that can solve those problems, which still prevent a truly prevent the possibility of fully benefiting from the single market to a considerable number of our citizens.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you very much. Of course, an essential part of this is the response from the member states themselves and how it is to be viewed in the border regions. And I wonder if I might come to you, Pavel. Pavel Branda is the deputy mayor from Rádlo Municipality in the Czech Republic, chairman of the Commission for International Cooperation of the Union of Towns and Municipalities in the Czech Republic, but also, and very importantly, vice president of the Association of European Border Regions and a member of the European Committee of the Regions. So all the attributes of the commentator on these subjects. Pavel, I wonder if you could tell us something, please, about the response of the European Committee of the Regions to the proposal.
Yes, of course. Since we're talking about a proposal that reacts to the real needs on the ground, we are, of course, an institution that has an advisory function, of course, but I think this is our main goal, to show that this really reflects the needs of our regions and communities that live close to the border, because the citizens are in direct contact with us every day, and we feel that these obstacles hinder the development of the regions, and also the development of the cooperation that has been sometimes developed for many years. There are enthusiastic actors on both sides of the border. If you just give examples in the fields of education, medical rescue services, etc., firemen. But if it's not legally possible to go further in the cooperation, that needs to be. So the committee fully supports the work of the European Parliament and the European Commission by providing concrete examples and saying, yes, we really need this on the ground.
Pavel, thank you very much. We're having a little trouble with your connection, so if I may, I'll just remind people that there are some really interesting points being made in the chat, which we'll pick up in our discussion in a moment, but the chat is a very complimentary and helpful discussion. Our participants will be aware that we've asked them in our second poll a question about the approach that we are to take and which are they regard as the most essential of the parameters for the design of an EU-wide legal tool. We have the results. I wonder if we could bring the results up so we can see the results on our screens. Have we got them available? Can we bring the results of the second poll up, please? Okay, so let's have a look. So we have here it being voluntary, member states should be free to choose which border obstacles to solve or not. That is, oh no, hang on, I haven't got the poll results. That's one person's response, is it? Hang on, let's get clear. Okay, sorry, I beg your pardon. I have it, I think, here. It being voluntary, member states should be free to choose which border obstacles to solve or not, 10%. The creation of one or more coordination points in each member state to ensure border regions have clarity to whom they should send their obstacles, 38%. The minimization of administrative burden associated with the implementation of the tool, 40%. And complementarity with other existing tools or by or multinational level, such as international treaties, 13%. So let's that's quite interesting. Let me play that back into our colleagues in the panel for a moment. Dirk, you're in our panel for the discussion. Do you want to just say something about clearly there was an acceptance of a majority saying they're in favour of an EU-wide legal tool. The second poll suggests there are a number of characteristics of that EU-wide legal tool, or which would be of value. What I was very interested in there was the relatively large number of people who support the creation of one or more coordination points. So there is real clarity about how to, if I could say, how to mobilize an EU-wide legal tool to deal with an obstacle, to overcome a specific obstacle. Is that perhaps it's not fair to ask you, Dirk, perhaps it's fairer to ask Sandro in the first instance. Coordination points, are they a feature of the proposal? And they're clearly something which our participants see as a very valuable part.
Yes, they are. Can I answer?
Yes, please.
Yes, of course, they are part of the proposal. I would say that they are the most innovative part of the proposal. Both on one side, we confirmed the need to create cross-border coordination points. That was an element which was there since the very beginning, and on which rightly the Commission has insisted very much, because we need to ensure also some exchange of practice and coordination and dialogue between the different coordination points, because some problems repeat themselves in different member states. So that is certainly something which we confirmed. We make it much simple. Basically, I mean, each member state is free to either create a new office for the cross-border internal coordination, or to indicate an existing authorities to fulfill the mandate of cross-border points. So also this is pretty simple for a member state. On the other side, as I said, what we introduced and what we worked more on was the possibility to create a ad hoc cross-border committee, because sometimes the obstacles for the possibility of launching cross-border initiative, obstacle also for cross-border workers, is not only one single obstacle issue, but a series of issues. Some administrative practices, some rules, etc. So we thought that it can be useful to create an ad hoc cross-border committee with all the actors involved, and on the two sides of the border, and together they can see what are the different solutions to adopt to remove that obstacle. I mean, the Commission has given many examples. I can give you one that to me is one of the most telling about the absurdity of the situation we are living. I could give you many, but I give you one because the issue of the obstacle between Gorizia and Nova Gorica at the border between Italy and Slovenia. Gorizia and Nova Gorica used to be one single city. Then they were divided after the Second World War, and there is a piazza, a square, which is called Transalpina Square, Piazza Transalpina, where the border goes across. And at the time of the Cold War, that was really a sort of wall between Italy and Slovenia. Today, if you go to Piazza Transalpina, I was there when I was working at the Commission in 2004 to celebrate the accession of Slovenia to the European Union. I was there with the President of the Commission. If you go there, it's a nice square, and there is a line which recalls you, here there was a border, if you want. Here there is a border between Italy and Slovenia. Gorizia and Nova Gorica together are a capital of the culture, of European culture, in 2025. And of course, Gorizia and Nova Gorica would like to organize joint event, concert, exhibition, art exhibition in the square. They can't. They can't because, for example, the rules for the security guards between Slovenia and Italy are different. So we got the absurdity of two cities which are one single European capital of culture, which share a square, where the border it doesn't exist. You have to look down on the ground to find the border, but they cannot organize joint event for the European culture. So in this kind, we think, and I talked also to the authorities of the two cities, they think, well, if we had at our disposal a cross-border committee which tackle all this issue and which help us to overcome the obstacle to organize joint events, it would be very useful. So also this idea was idea which I made up talking to the local authorities, listen to them and seeing how we can, what is the best way to help them to tackle these barriers and to remove these obstacles.
Sandro, thank you very much indeed. Can I just, sorry, I will come to you in a moment. I just wanted to point out that there's in the chat, there's some very useful points being made, including the value of the B solutions cases to demonstrate where there are certain obstacles that might well benefit from the application of additional legal tools. And I also should just remind everybody that in the second poll, there are some interesting questions arising from the second poll results. All of our participants can continue the conversation on the polls on the Futurium platform, where the border focal point network community is based. And if our speakers have a moment to put their responses to some of those points on the second poll in particular in the Futurium, that would be helpful too. Dirk, I wonder if we're getting towards the end of our time. We don't want to have people miss out on the discussion. I wonder if you could respond to some of the points. Oh, I beg your pardon. Pavel, we lost you a bit, didn't we there? Dirk, if you're okay with it, I'm going to ask Pavel and Thiemo just to say a quick response, not least to what they've heard from Sandro, and then come back to you for the finish. Pavel.
Yes, thank you for the floor. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that the coordination points or the single office where you can actually report the obstacles is essential. Sometimes I hear from some member states, you don't know of any obstacles on the border, but if you don't have a systematic way and a channel how to report them, then of course this is where the problem starts. So I think this is very key part of the regulation. To have a mechanism how to collect. Yeah.
Very good. Pavel, forgive me, are we losing your connection again?
And short which way to go.
Sorry, Pavel, forgive me. We're not hearing you clearly. Forgive me, I'm sorry about that. Your voice is breaking up.
16 years and 19 years in the.
No, I'm sorry. We've lost you, Pavel. Sorry about that. We lost you there. Thiemo, you wanted just to come in as well.
Yes, I mean I can be rather short. I mean, looking at the poll results, when the majority of people now say minimization of administrative burden associated with the implementation of the tool, that actually indicates that we should make use of the tools which are on the ground. And I think that's a clear signal. So important is really what we can see that we have, and Pavel was saying that we have an instance where some people can address themselves. So they have the feeling problem is taken care of. Of course, then we know we cannot guarantee a solution, but at least it's acknowledged and put in a kind of process. And on the other side, it's also important to note, to get an overview where are the most burning problems. So if we can manage that, we are already a big step further. And I was very happy about also what Sandro Gozi said about how the legal tool should be placed, because it takes a lot on further building on the Commission's proposal, how we can actually come to a good construction of the proposal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Thiemo. Dirk, apologies to Christa, but time is against us. Dirk, can I come back to you just for some responses to our discussion and some of the points you've been hearing?
Well, very briefly, we tried to propose a simple thing to solve a simple question. Just imagine a project or service for people. What is the cost and the time needed when you build a tram line from the suburb to Madrid, to the center of Madrid, and what it costs when the tram goes from Strasbourg to Germany? Or the example of Sandro Gozi, you have this open air event. It's not only the guards, it's also how long can the people drink and eat. So you have this everywhere in Europe. It's the same, but it costs more. It's more cumbersome because there is a border in between. We wanted to address this. So we were very shocked when many member states in the council said we are attacking their sovereignty of parliaments, constitutional issues. We had never imagined a revolution. So this is what is an obstacle. Does it cost more time or money or both when it is crossing a border than compared when it does not? That's as easy as that. And that's about the single market. Again, it's 30 years this year. And Karl-Heinz Lamberts, the former prime minister of the German-speaking community of Belgium, used to say, what works in a border region will work elsewhere. When it does not work in a border region, it probably will not work elsewhere. That's the single market. That borders don't matter. This is basic for the European Union construction, and it's not more than that. And everything else is just a reason to prevent us from making life of people in border regions easier. That's why we still work on that. And our commissioner committed last week in the parliament that we will reply. We do our utmost to reply within 3 months, not just saying, yes, we will do something, but actually coming with a revised proposal to start negotiations with Parliament and Council.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful and helpful to know that, in particular, that latter point. I know people will be watching and have read or listened to the plenary session at the European Parliament, and we're very fascinated to have that. We're very, very pleased, very glad indeed to have had you with us, Sandro Gozi, and for your contributions to our discussion. Also to Christa, to Thiemo and to Pavel, thank you very much for such excellent presentations on your own perspectives. I'm sure your data will stick with us, Christa, as we think about how this may be taken forward. And it's obviously really interesting to see that there is support behind an EU-wide legal tool and a complete understanding of the importance of how it is to be approached with some of those issues that Thiemo raised and the way in which it is to be bottom-up and voluntary. And I think it's a fascinating move forward to create a legal tool that reduces administrative and legal obstacles. That's a really exciting possibility for legislators, both in the Commission and the Parliament and the Council. So thank you all very much indeed for that fascinating discussion. Do continue the discussion in our Futurium. You have the link in the chat. Thank you to all of those in the chat who put good points up for discussion. We look forward to seeing you toward the latter part of October or maybe early November for the next Beyond Borders breakfast. Another in a fascinating series of discussions about border regions, living labs of European integration, again, proving themselves to be at the forefront of European integration and cohesion. Thank you very much indeed, all of our panelists, all of our participants today, and have a very good day. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.